before coming on the floor to avoid what happened recently in the House, he said, adding, we further discussed opening channels of communication between the leaders of the two parties, including a possible meeting with the president at a future date. He said at no time was there any discussion specifically about the president requiring my intervention in the impasse on the E-levy. So this is the issue. Gabi Chidako meeting former President John Dramani Mahama, something that has left followers of the National Democratic Congress unenthused, some followers I should say. But I'll take Ms. Elenda Eku's thoughts on this particular issue.
Well, the fact that Mr. Gabi Ochidako went to visit Mr. Mahama, and as he said, they had a discussion on all manner of issues. I don't see why anybody should be bothered about it. I mean, the fact that they are on different opposing sides does not mean that they are not friends. I honestly do not know their relationship. But obviously, for him to be granted audience to see Mr. Mahama, then I presume they have been acquainted for years. And nothing stops them from discussing issues that is happening. I mean, we all discuss these issues when our friends and family visit us. So for me, I do not see what the hula baloo is about. What is wrong if Mr. Ochidako went to talk to Mr. Mahama? What is wrong with it? And for the statements Mr. Mahama brought, ex-President Mahama brought, yes, I mean, it's because of the way I believe people reacted when they heard the story that the man had gone to see him. And so he had to, and there was a post on Facebook about one of the NDC Facebook activists sharing what might have happened. That was leading to false information. So I'm sure that is why he also came out stating exactly what has happened. There's nothing wrong if the two of them decides to talk about what is happening in Parliament, because as it is now, we would have to reach out. We have to get Ghana moving. So if that is one of the ways to reach out and make sure that on the 18th, when the parliamentarians go back to Parliament, the issues are sorted out, and we'll not have to go back to the disgraceful events of was it Monday? I think it was Tuesday. Tuesday. Any way possible, anyhow possible, we have to take steps and do it. After all, we are all Ghanaians. We have family members. I have family members who are NDC. My auntie, my mother's older sister, was the late Patience Ado, the former Eastern Regional Minister for the Eastern Region under the NDC ex-President Rawlings's tenure. She also I think she was a Deputy Minister for Education too. So I have my maternal, my mother, who was in NDC. I am a full hog elephant, daughter of the elephant. That doesn't mean that when I see my family members who are also NDC, my uncle is a full NDC man. So what's wrong if a high-profile MPP person goes to visit a high-profile NDC person? What is wrong? I really don't get the issue here. We are family, we are friends. The fact that we disagree on issues does not mean that we should be enemies. Right. And with the things going on, if we all take entrenched positions, how are we going to move Ghana forward? I think this hung parliament has brought us into a situation where we will all be forced to work together for the good of Ghana. So the sitting government and my party and the government is prepared to listen and dialogue with the opposition. That is what I see. I don't see anything wrong with it. And I believe the opposition too is prepared to talk. So now we have to get to a middle ground so that we can move on. Right. That is what I see. I don't see why people are angry about this.
Right. Right. Thank you very much, Ms. Elenda. Let me come to Mr. Listo and Anapuku.
First of all that we need to understand is that Ken Ufuriata, the finance minister, has plunged this country into serious chaos. And the remedy for it is not to put so much burden on the taxpayer, but rather to try and gather the mess and make use of it. On E-levy, I don't see any wisdom in the E-levy. As far as I know, if you agree to want to make it look like COVID has affected even a government who will not have anything except what the people have given to it. How much less won't it affect society? To the extent that a whole government machinery could come out and use propaganda to describe why they are not able to perform, especially when that government has gotten money within the last almost 5 years, that no government in 8 years has gotten half of that money. No government has gotten half of that money that the Akufo-Addo and Kanu-Foriata and Bawumia have had within the last almost 5 years. No government. Then this same government comes to the people to want to tax us. And the way of taxing us is almost like an armed robber trying to scale a wall into someone's house to force his way to make money when that money has already been taxed. We have questioned him on several occasions. We are on several platforms. He put out a question as to us telling him how he should get money to fund his whatever expenditure, which expenditure, most of them are very fruitless, very useless to the plight of the country, and some of them is in the abyss. In fact, this is a government that has been so lucky, very much lucky, to the extent that your predecessor will leave you funds that had serious monies in them. Just recently when COVID broke, I mean, one of the funds that his predecessor, John Mahama, left for him was the stabilization fund. And he had that to use. Imagine if Akufo-Addo is no more and we had another pandemic. What has he left in the kitty for any predecessor, for any successor, for use? So, I mean, sometimes you sit and you ask yourself, what plan did they have? And how were they able to hoodwink people to believe that Akufo-Addo had anything better to offer? Especially when his track record in government has pointed out that, I mean, he had everything, but he has nothing to offer. Everything. He has gotten more than anybody has gotten. No, not any government has gotten half. In 8 years, put John Mahama mills together, they have not gotten half of what Akufo-Addo has accrued within the last 5 years. Half. I'm talking about half. And they have nothing to show. It's not as if they have something substantial to show. It's not as if they have built more roads than the Mahama mills built. It's not as if they have built more roads than Kufuor built. It's not as if they have built more roads than Rawlings built. Put all the debts that we had in this country together, and when Mahama was leaving, we were at 120.2 billion. I hear people say 122. It's 120.2 billion. And you come and you accrue about 241 or so. Some of them have not even been put to the computation. And yet, these same people come back to us after having done nothing, virtually nothing. You can't, Akufo-Addo cannot account for 10% of the money he has accrued. 10%, it will be a difficult thing for him to account, especially when you have auditors that can audit from day one his accruals to date. He can't account for 10%. Some of the monies are not in this country, and I believe so. That is how come Belgian government will have to, if you have money in Belgium, they should be happy. Why would they tell you that we will just cancel your account? Thievery is the only sector that is hyped. It's doing well. Corruption is doing well to the extent that the Auditor General will have 12.8 billion sinking in public pockets. No, private pockets rather. People who are making money. I don't believe that if you have shame, you will come back to people to ask them for about 6.9 or so billion as projected figure, when you have almost stolen 12.8 billion, if you are not into thievery, you pay people who will steal the monies. If public financial management is at play, you should be worried that Ghanaians' money have ended up in private pockets. Then shamelessly, you will put an E-levy proposal to the people of this country, everyone, including those who are in parliament on the ticket of MPP. Their constituents are waiting for them. And look, most of them will be one-term MPs, and most of them will end their tenure in this year, especially when we are going to campaign against them. You have impoverished us already. You have put us into a certain, quagmire that trying to get out of it is a very difficult task for the Ghanaian. You have collapsed enough of the banks. You have collapsed even our economy. The social economy of this country is on the knees. Then the people want to let you be aware that, hey, Mr. President, Mr. Minister for Finance, Mr. Vice President, enough is enough. Then you come back to tell us that you will use your numbers. And I heard the president and I was laughing, virtually saying they have the majority in parliament. When he's supposed to be a lawyer who should know better. You see, some of these tendencies, when I listen to the president, I feel so ashamed of his profession as a lawyer. I don't know who taught him to be a lawyer in this manner. That you know that the MPP has 137 and you say you have majority. And what is the meaning of majority? Does the MPP have majority? You see, and I think the NDC is not doing well because it tells you that there should be a by-election. The president has admitted that Esiama has now decided to be a member of the MPP. If not, he should retract and apologize. The NDC should make it a big case, that utterance from the president. What has he done in negotiation with Esiama that makes him so proud to say they have the majority? When we know Esiama is there as an independent candidate. And one thing that we have to know, you see, we are people who do not like to tell it as it is. All these things that are playing out in parliament, what brought the fight? Joe Wise sat in there, Joe Osewusu. He sat in there and said he counted himself, even when he was presiding, as one of the majority. That's what he said. And that he counted, he said, and I, Osewusu, MP for Bekwai, making it 138. Can you imagine? When what's their rules, standing order, was against them. To the extent that when you are presiding, you can't count yourself to make a quorum. And he counted himself. So what brought about this brouhaha in parliament? No one seems to want to point the accusing finger on that incompetent first deputy speaker who is almost plunging this nation into chaos. If you don't have a potent parliament, you don't have a democracy. This is a parliamentary democracy that we are practicing. And you see someone who has shown so much recklessness to the point that he is trying to undermine the constitution. And no one seems to be worried about it. The last thing he did, that caused almost a mayhem in the parliament. He said, for those who are for the motion, say aye. Did he say aye? Did you hear him say aye? So why was he going to be amongst of those who said aye when he had not said aye? And you are not able to point the accusing finger on him. Why are we behaving like strangers and ostriches in this country? So we don't have to be blaming MPP or NDC. We have someone to blame, and that is Joseph Osewusu, MP for Bekwai, who is trying to make the constitution of this country almost like a toilet roll. He doesn't have respect for the people of this country. He doesn't respect the constitution. He doesn't respect law. And he doesn't respect anybody. And he's doing things at his own will and whims and caprices. Now, on the issue of John Mahama meeting Gabi Asare-Otedako, in the first place, I had a question to ask. And that question was to know in what capacity did Gabi Asare-Otedako visit President Mahama? Friends don't do to discuss matters like governance. They don't, please. What role? Unless you're a member, of the government, I do discussions with President Mahama. But President Mahama has not, put it in public like he has done with Gabi Asoro-Kyedakun. You understand? Over the years, Ghanaians have had a certain belief that Gabi Asoro-Kyedakun is almost a de facto president or so. They call him prime minister in some cases. And this underpins what we discussed in the past as a nepotistic government. That aside, I don't have a problem with their meeting. And I've put it out publicly, not having any issue whatsoever, apart from this question I asked. In what capacity did he meet him? Now, if he met him as a friend, fine. I don't have a problem with it. But the problem I have with the critics of John Mahama, who don't see the positive, especially when Gabi has exposed himself as being a de facto president or a prime minister, especially when Gabi has told the world that now he has a stake to have to go to John Mahama with Akufo-Addo's worries to discuss issues about governance, issues about, if you're not a member of a government, you don't discuss governance. You don't. So to that extent, I rather would want those critics of John Mahama to see it in this way. One, Gabi has now told the world that Akufo-Addo has no idea anymore, and John Mahama has got ideas. He has now seen the competence in John Mahama. That is the only reason why Gabi Asoro-Kyedakun, the cousin to Akufo-Addo, will walk to the one that has competence and capabilities and potency of ideas. Because that notwithstanding, let's find out one thing. You see, it's a drama of a paradox. In one breath, that man is incompetent. Everyone, just recently, I heard Baumia in Kumasi discussing Mahama as almost a good for the garbage being. He's only good for the garbage. Then you send, because of some rudeness or arrogance and all that, you send Gabi to go to seek for how he's able to talk to the minority or whatever. Now, that man, John Mahama, if you put his achievements with that money he had in his hands, apart with Akufo-Addo, you see that the heights of both will tell who has performed better. So, going to him is to solicit for ideas, especially when they have stolen almost everything that belongs to the state. I use my words carefully because I know those are the best words that fit them, because you can't have 477 billion and perform this abysmal and come back to the Ghanaian and tell him you have nothing in your coffers. You don't. So to that extent, Gabi's visit to John Mahama is rather telling the Ghanaian that Akufo-Addo has short ideas. He has no more any idea. And so let's go to the competent one, the one who has got the prowess in governance, the one who has got the magic wand, who can tell us of how we can get out of this quagmire that it's a self-inflicted quagmire, so that in the end we are able to do what the Ghanaian will be attracted to. Last but not the least, what I expect of John Mahama is to put out there that E-levy is a no. I want to hear his idea on E-levy. I want to know what he says about E-levy, so that it will not appear as though he doesn't have a voice when it's about E-levy. He has to put out clearly what his stance on E-levy is. As for whatever the minority have done in Parliament, they stand to be praised. They have not been selfish. I mean, the E-levy, if you came out to say if they are not accepting or if they have rejected the budget, they will not be paid, and they still stood firm and said they don't even care if they are not paid, and they did all that they have done, they stand to be praised. Meanwhile, what I think the MPP should reflect, especially knowing that 2024 is just around the corner. Their constituents, those poor taxpayers who have been paying tax out of their mobile money vendoring on the streets in their constituency, E-levy is going to collapse their jobs. E-levy is going to make sure they become impoverished. So that if you think about how a capitalist government is supposed to behave in rather building businesses and not collapsing business, you have to sit quietly, soberly, reflect, and know that there is no wisdom whatsoever in the E-levy. I'm grateful.
Right, thank you very much. Very interesting submission there from Mr. Listo Nana Puku, who is the Executive Secretary for Good Governance Advocacy Group Ghana, GGAGG. Right, let me come to Mr. Pratt.
Well, I think the most important thing is that Mr. Gabi Ochedaku did not go to former President Mahama's house to discuss how to cook donuts. He did not go there, to discuss, the organization of a Christmas party and so on. He went there, apparently, to discuss government business. And this immediately raises the question of capacity. Who is Mr. Ochedaku? He's not a member of government. He's not even a district chief executive. He is not a member of the executive of the party. He's not even a constituency polling station chairman of the party. So immediately the question it raises is capacity. In what capacity did he go to see the former president? Are we to believe that there are persons who have no formal commitments, who have no position, and yet who do government business? And if that is the case, how does that sit with the Constitution? How does that sit with the law? And how do we see that in the light of all the allegations which have been made about how government is run today? And for me, this is a very serious matter. Okay. Now, even if you assume that he had the mandate of the president, we don't know that yet. Even if we assume that he had the mandate of the president, the question then arises as to why him? Why can't the president talk to the former president? Why does he have to go through emissaries and so on? At the very worst, one would expect that the sitting vice president may be the person. That's at the worst, to engage in this. Now, coming from where I sit, it appears to me, and again I'm choosing my words very carefully, that we have so destroyed the cordial relations which should have existed. Why have we so destroyed the cordial relations which have existed? In the past, we are told that there were meetings between the incoming president and the outgoing president. From all that we know, none of the agreements reached were honored. And in fact, some of the agreements reached in meetings were used as propaganda tools against the former president. For example, the issue about where he wanted to stay and so on. These were agreements which allegedly had been reached meeting in the Santini's palace. Look at how they used and so on. if you take the sitting vice president, I'm wondering how he can ever, in his life, approach the former president to have any meaningful discussion, given the jibes he has been throwing at him, making fun of him, you know, and so on. And any opportunity he gets, he has to go for the jugular and so on. That kind of attitude not useful for governance in the situation we find ourselves in today. We don't have a majority in parliament, a minority in parliament, 137 versus 137. It calls for dialogue, it calls for mutual respect, and so on. That does not appear, you know, to exist. Now, in any case, reading all the newspapers and so on, it appears that the purpose of the visit was to solicit the help of the former president in prevailing upon members of parliament of the NDC to pass the E-levy. Is that how we conduct business? Very strange. Is that how we conduct? I would have thought that the strength of the arguments and so on is what should carry the day, and not, you know, the use of these personal influences and so on. But hey, be that as it may, after what has happened in Parliament, is meaningful dialogue possible today? It is not. We've gone to the extent of people actually exchanging blows, people getting their clothes torn, you know, insults and so on. I mean, the Speaker of Parliament, did you read the kinds of things which were written about him and posted on the social media? Mm. Even drawing his wife into it, the wife's family into it and so on. How do you do this? And then after doing all of this, come and say that, look, let's sit down and have dialogue. Dialogue for what? And so on. I'm very deeply convinced, and I'm very, very deeply convinced that we've now come to a point in our history where dialogue, consensus building and so on is an imperative. Without that, we can't move forward. It's impossible to move forward. Now, if you look at what has happened in Parliament, it should tell you that we are heading for chaos. Listen, the Minister for Energy, the last time, just after surgery in Dubai, he was flown down, he came to Parliament in clutches, or on clutches, actually being held into Parliament House. There's a woman, honorable member of Parliament, who, according to the story I've heard, had just delivered. She came into this jurisdiction leaving a 1-week-old baby where she delivered. 1-week-old baby. I mean, how callous can we be? And if you talk to all the pediatricians and so on, they tell you that newly born babies have to have exclusive breastfeeding for at least 1 year. It has health implications and so on. Because we want to get a vote, we ignore the health of a 1-week-old baby, drag this woman to Parliament to come and vote. The doctor said that she could be in Parliament for 1 week. It's past 1 week. We're in the second week. She's still here. I mean, what is this? It is not possible to play the numbers game. You can't play the numbers game forever. So at some point, we have to play some other game. Of course, if you talk about the issue of bad blood, it has a history. I recall that the NDC government at some point wanted to have what they call the Senche consensus. And there were leading members of the New Patriotic Party who felt that it was a good idea and actually wanted to participate. Their party warned them that there would be consequences if they participated. They withdrew at the last minute. Now, having conducted yourself in this manner, how do you now use the same mechanism that you rejected? That's another issue, you know, and so on. And I'm very deeply worried about the state of affairs. You know, this morning, one of the people I really respect, and I came to respect Mr. Kwame Pienu a lot because we were in the same prison. I was in the same prison for him for some time, spent about 6 months with him in prison. And it was in prison that I saw his leadership quality. He organized and found prison farm, you know, and did many things that I won't talk about here. Organized a choir for the prison and so on. And he was an excellent person. He's one person who also has been a very strong pillar in the New Patriotic Party. A lot of people don't know how the New Patriotic Party was built. I was directly involved. Akotuampa and I inaugurated the first Dankwa Buzia Club at the KO Methodist Park in Kumasi. Akotuampa and I. Professor Duboahini and I inaugurated the second Dankwa Buzia Club in Koporidua and so on. So I know what I'm talking about. Mr. Kwame Pienu was most instrumental in the formation of the party and its funding. In fact, the first headquarters of the party at Kokomemle was funded by people like Mr. Kwame Pienu and so on. He's a very loyal member of the New Patriotic Party. Now, listen to what he says today about the state of the economy. And this is a story which is published on the front page of the Insight, which I just read. It says, Mr. Kwame Pienu, an economist and leading member of the ruling New Patriotic Party, has heavily descended on Finance Minister Kenneth Ofori-Atta, accusing him of mismanaging the country's fiscal space. According to the NPP stalwart, the Finance Minister's indulgence in excessive borrowing is destroying the country's economy and leading to high public debt. He said it is worrying that the Akufo-Addo administration is currently borrowing as though there was no tomorrow. Mr. Pienu, in an interview with a crowd-based TV3 yesterday, only yesterday, on the minister's performance in terms of the management of the economy, said, no, he hasn't done a good job. He's overborrowing. We are not getting value for money. He said COVID-19 should have taught us that we should cut our coat according to our cloth. There is no Father Christmas, but that is not what is happening. This government is borrowing as if there is no end. Somebody has to pay for it. If you take a bond, I'm not going to pay for it. My grandchildren are going to pay for it, he added. Ofori-Atta, and this is in quotation, Ofori-Atta needs to realize that he's not just a budget and expenditure minister. He is Minister of Finance, and so on and so on. Now, these are the views of Mr. Kwame Pienu. Elsewhere, I've read that Mr. Kwame Pienu is complaining that he's actually made several calls to Honorable Kenneth Ofori-Atta, and that he doesn't even pick his calls. Now, if you cannot talk to your own leading members of your party, how do you talk to the opposition? If you cannot talk to somebody like Mr. Kwame Pienu, how do you talk to the opposition? So all these talk about consensus building, all these talks about constructive engagement and so on, where is it? When we are refusing to talk to somebody like Mr. Kwame Pienu, that is assuming that Mr. Kwame Pienu is right. Of course, I have no reason to believe that he's not right. I've known him as a very honest person. You understand? I've dealt with him for many years.
Most to an economist.
I've dealt with Mr. Kwame Pienu for many years. And I know that he speaks his mind. I know that he's an honest person. So if you're not talking to Mr. Kwame Pienu, who are you going to talk to? Setepe? If you're not talking to Kwame Pienu, are you going to be talking to Haruna Idrisu and so on? So there's a real problem. Now, my brother, let's look at the facts, the real facts. There is no doubt today, no doubt, and I've said this many times over, it's becoming actually a cliche, that if you take total national revenue, we are spending 128% of total national revenue on two line items, debt servicing and public sector emoluments. That's a collapsed economy. The economy has collapsed. We can't build gutter if you don't borrow. That I was saying that you can't even buy petrol into the president's car if you borrow. That's a collapsed economy. You understand? 128% of total national revenue being expended on 2 line items. That's a disaster, complete disaster. We've run the economy aground. And today in one of the other newspapers, this is a newspaper which is owned and I suspect edited by Albert Dufour, who is from the Atinka media, you know. No, there's another one. This is a daily analyst. There's another one, business analyst.
Talks about the depreciation of the cedi.
Talks about the depreciation of the cedi. The levels of the depreciation of the cedi, clearly unprecedented, and so on. You understand? So this is where we are, and I'm worried. This is where we are. And we keep borrowing, and we're going to borrow a lot more. Forget the issue of electoral promises. I don't want to go there. You understand? I don't want to go, because if you go there, I mean, what does it mean? Yeah, they promised not to borrow, they promised not to raise taxes and so on. That's it. We are in the hole. How do we get out of the hole? That's my main focus. You understand? So I don't want to do that kind of politics where you go back and say, well, 4 years ago, Vice President Bawumia said this. What is he doing today and so on? He said that. Today, the whole country, we are NPP, NDC, CPP or whatever, we are all in the hole together. We will sink, we'll be buried in that deep hole if we don't find a solution out of that hole. So the focus ought to be on how to get out of this huge, widening and deepening hole that we find ourselves in. You understand? And I believe that perhaps, not perhaps, I believe that the way out is to try and attempt to build some kind of national consensus. I've done my part. You understand? If I tell you some of the things that I've done within the last 3 months, quite apart from advocating the national consensus on platforms like this, my friends, you know, and I have many friends in government and in opposition, you know, I've urged them in private conversations and so on, kick the arrogance, you know, to kick out the Kalambani attitude, you know, and find ways of sitting down to talk. I've told them. And one of the ministers that I saw 2 weeks ago, you know, and I told him, I said, my friend, what are you doing? What are you doing? You want to collapse this country on us? Get out of this attitude. Understand? Reach out to the other side and begin to talk. This country is collapsing on our heads. Last week, I did a very simple exercise. And my brother, look, it hit me in the face. The extent of degradation hit me in the face. All you have to do is to take prices as at 2016 and compare them to prices today. You will collapse. If you take, for example, a bag of maize, it has more than quadrupled in this short period. Any item you take. Now, that must be the clearest indication. We are seeing these astronomical rises in prices and so on. We are being told that we are doing very well with managing inflation. What is inflation? Inflation simply is the rate at which prices are rising or falling. That is the only definition of inflation. Whether you're a PhD holder, an O-level student and so on, this can only be your definition of inflation. Now, if that is the definition of inflation, how can prices be quadrupling and we are talking about inflation at 12.7%? How is that possible? Does it make sense? Doesn't make economic sense, you know. But maybe we have to be careful, because I recall that in 1986, when I spoke like this, I ended up in prison in 1986. You understand? I mean, 1986, I raised issues about the figures and how the figures don't match the reality. Because we are being told the same stories in 1986. Same stories, same cock and bull stories. Those are the same stories we are being told. We are being told that the economic recovery program was doing very well, the structural adjustment program had brought benefits to us and so on. When indeed the economy was collapsing on our heads. You know, and look, I am very, very deeply worried, very bros. You know, by 2 a.m., Reuters had put the phone everywhere in the world. Our republic. We should be careful. We are destroying our reputation. Hard-won reputation that people died to build. Sergeant Ajete and Corporal Tipo and others died in order to build this reputation. Look at the work that Jenkri Jewu and others did to bring us here. We were the leading advocates. We were the mecca of African independence. Come together and begin to think about how to take us out of this quagmire of disgrace, this quagmire of shame, this quagmire of indignity, and so on. The Ghanaian people deserve better than this.
The Ghanaian people deserve better than this. Thank you very much, Mr. Pratt, for that wonderful submission. We are pressed with time, though we have some 2 more topics to discuss. But let me read a few of your messages, then I'll take the final words of my panelists. So this one says, Abi Evelyn, the former president should be careful about these MPP people because they have an agenda behind this meeting. And Emmanuel Ajiman says, nice one, Listo Nanakusi Puku. And Mujahidu Sani says, don't engage any hypocrite, right? Honorable Abedi Kwada says, I think former President John Mahama is just an attention seeker. Did he consult the opposition leader when he introduced taxes on condoms, cutlasses, and kaya? What is this? Even if the president has made the attempt to see you for the resolution of the E-levy, why should you come out and tell the whole world? I leave it to posterity.
Attempted to see President Mahama.
Right. Kwame Mark Osborne says, I was sad when I heard JDM met Gabi Ochedakum. How can you JDM meet play? Well, right. If Gabi Ochedakum was there for government business, it's not a right statement. Is Gabi a president? Shameful government. How can you meet incompetent leaders you call John Dramani Mahama? And okay, Nana Kwabran Kitia says this woman with her knowledge must join the NDC. How could she be under a Abronye DC? The Lab Dollar says, my humble suggestion, if Listo can be right, somebody wants to see Listo on the station more often. And Courage Blawoda says there is not anything wrong with my President Mahama meeting Gabi. If you are an intelligent person, you see this as a strategy for Mahama to read the mindset of Nanado. Okay. AU Farouk says, good morning. I salute the minority MPs for being bold in fighting to save Ghanaians from the insensitive E-levy. The E-levy bill is the laziest way to generate revenue. And Dennis Y. Akwete says, indeed, I don't have a problem with Gabi going to see former President John Mahama as indicated by Madam Ama on national issues, as it is obvious that Gabi is a de facto prime minister of the current government, appeared to be sanctioned by the president, but the incompetence or arrogance with which it was done is the problem. Okay. Abu Bakar Sadiq Abdullah says, I always like listening to the legendary uncle Kwesi Pratt. Sophia Nsako, good morning, Pan African TV. Good morning. Dennis Wakwete did okay, right? I've already done this message. Nana Kwablankitia says we need to celebrate Mr. Pratt as well as a well-meaning Ghanaian. If you had only 5 of his kind, I bet you Ghana would have been a paradise. The man is a hero. He's just too deep. Okay. Thank you very much. These are some of your messages. We are hard pressed with time, so let me take the final words of my panelists. Then we can call it a day. Let me start with Listo One and Apuku.
Well, I just want to touch briefly on the Mr. PNM's, discussion. You see, when you have a government that is so recalcitrant, a government that does not want to heed words of wisdom, a government that does not want to reflect soberly, a government that believes that it has almost every knowledge, like Kwekwanase did when Ntekuma had to draw his attention to why he didn't have to put the wisdom he had put in that cone on his belly, but rather put it behind him. The government is up for crash. Mr. Pratt mentioned a couple of things that I feel if government was to reflect on those, they won't be here. Ghana won't be here. One of the sad things is that when a government fails, it has not just failed, it has failed a country. It has failed the indigents. It has failed almost everyone on this planet, because Ghana is not on an island. And that's how come I would want government, by seconding what Mr. Pratt said, to visit some persons who have got prowess like Mr. PNM. I've been reading about him. I have not met him personally. I only may have seen him sometime in the histories when the party was being formed. I remember those times with Dr. Nane. I'm not able to identify most of the people that I saw during that time. Look, this cannot be MPP. I've said it. I'm a member of the MPP, and I've never shied away from being a member, even though I'm very blunt. Because when it is wrong, it is not only wrong with the MPP, it's wrong with Ghana. Now, the MPP is in power, but we have an entity called the Kufuor as president. If guys to want to, even when it is wrong, a time will come. You see, those times when we used to criticize Rawlings and say all manner of things, he's collapsing private businesses, he's doing all manner of bad things. Today, what is it that Rawlings did that we have not done worse? Tell me one. One thing that we accuse Rawlings of doing. Is it about being brutish? Is it about Rawlings being arrogant? What have you not done worse? Is it about corruption, thievery? Is it about insecurity? Is it about dissipating public funds? Today, here we are. And we are not reflecting soberly. We are not portraying that character of people who have some dignity. And when the center cannot hold, we want to blame it. I've seen I've just cited Nana Komia saying the NDC is intransigent. Who is supposed to refer to the other one as intransigent? When a government whose budget has been thrown to the garbage. It's not reflecting somebody to say, oh, A, B, C, D was wrong, so let me go and do some corrections and bring them. And see how I can lobby. The word is lobby. If you're not a good lobbyist, what business have you to be in government? Governance is about lobbying. It's about managing the resources of the people. And you cannot manage the resources of the people if you are not a lobbyist. So, I think so strongly that as we reflect on our embarrassment as a country, especially noting how parliamentarians have behaved in the past, we should single out why a deputy speaker has decided to disregard the dictates and the spirit of the law and created his own laws which cannot exist in any democracy, especially when you have counted yourself as being one of the members and counting Bekwai, not remembering that there is a whole community, Sal, Santro Kofi, Akpafo, Lolobi, and Lipe, under a watch of a so-called human rights activist and a lawyer. That community does not even have a representative. They don't have a representation. And you are proud to say Bekwai, member of Bekwai. Let us think. It's a wisdom thing. Ghana is not Ghana for a Ghanaian who feels he's superior to a Ghanaian. Ghana is for the use of all. It's for every Ghanaian. Even for the madman too. On the street. He is a Ghanaian. Ghana belongs to him too. If you listen to the wisdom of... Look, there was a time, just to finish with it. My father was coming from a funeral with my mother. And his car tie got, choked a nail. And it was flat on the... He had no spare tie. So he had to go to the vulcanizer to get a vulcanizer to fix it. After the vulcanizer fixed the tie, he was not able to fix the wheel nuts well. So while he drove, some of the wheel nuts went off. So it was left with only one. He had parked for almost an hour, not knowing what to do, because he was thinking he should leave the car there and go. This madman who was watching on as my father stood by came and told my father to put all the three, one wheel nut from the three tires that are left, and then put the three on the one that is now having one. So each one of them will get 4 wheel nuts. One that had gotten only one will now get 4 also. So 4, 4, 4, then he was able to drive. That madman on the street, he was able to prefer an option for that same man who drove his wife to the funeral. So it tells you that in democracy, the ones you think are mad in parliament, that you don't regard, look at how they talk down on the NDC. As if they are useless, a bunch of useless people. You have got the wisdom, you are behaving like Kwekwanasi, putting the pot on your belly. Go back to Tekuma and seek wisdom, like the Bible refers to the ant. Go to the ant, that little ant that you don't trust, you don't believe that it has got some. To the ant for wisdom. The incompetent one has become, the rejected stone has now become the cornerstone. Reflect on these things, and I believe that if you do, Ghana will move forward.
Right, thank you very much. Ms. Selindeko, your final words, briefly.
Make a statement on the things he said about the routes. That was one thing I had to go and check. And for the 8 years that his NDC was in power, you are not MPP, you are obviously NDC. From the 8 years that the NDC was in power, they expanded our roads by 69,000 kilometers. 20 to 7,000. To what is the total road network that Ghana was about 68. Out of that, we have 1,500 kilometers of asphalt overlays and 2,102 kilometers of bitumen surfacing, and all these are ongoing. I have a problem with it when obvious facts, and these facts you can cross-check Department of Feeder Roads, Department of Urban Roads, Ghana Highways Authority, just cross-check it, and you decide to twist it and turn it. Some of these things you have to give the facts as it is. You can have issues with all manner of things that you think that the MPP government isn't doing well. But to twist and turn figures, that one you can't do. Now, about the issues in Parliament and what is going on. Obviously, we need to have a discourse. Now, if the other side too decides to jump on a high horse and also decide to insult everybody, and the followers are threatening the MPs and all manner of things, insult your leaders for simply meeting with the other side, then you are also not doing anything well to make sure Ghana goes on. So I think this is a time for sanity to prevail. This is a time for the non-hawkish, non-hawkish activists of the party to also start putting our voice out. I am not a hawkish person. I believe to get the society moving, you need to negotiate, you need to dialogue. So those who are on the extreme ends, I think it's time, including my own brother, it's time for them to go down and tone down and let the level-headed people who want to get this nation moving start talking. Because the more the ones on this side are screaming their heads off and the ones on this side are screaming their heads off, the more the difference comes. That's the only thing I can say for now, because if we are going to go into the issues, we'll not get up for today. All I request is that when Parliament resumes by the 18th, I expect that issues would have been solved and we can move on as a country.
Right, thank you very much. Yeah, briefly, a minute.
Very briefly.
He spoke for how many minutes? I didn't interject.
We have a moderator, please. You know, I get so hurt when someone wants to, portray a certain character as, giving someone where to belong. I'm not a member of the NDC. I'm a member of the NPP. And if you care to know, perhaps when we were building the NPP, you were nowhere. So don't sit anywhere.
Don't attack me. When you were building the NPP, what do you mean by I was nowhere?
Right. You may not
you haven't met me before. And I'm saying that obviously by utterances, I don't believe that you are a member of the NPP. So if you think that you are a member of the NPP, you state it. You do not attack me personally. Now, when you were building the NPP, what do you mean by when you were building the NPP? Obviously, you were not one of the builders. Otherwise, you not be speaking the way you're speaking.
Thank you very much, lady and gentlemen. Mr. Pratt Jr., who is the managing editor for the Insight newspaper, as well as the General Secretary for the Socialist Movement of Ghana. Listo Nana Poku, Executive Secretary for Good Governance Advocacy Group, Ghana, and Ms. Ellen Deko, who happens to be a communicator for the New Patriotic Party, as well as a national women's organizer for the New Patriotic Party. Aspirant, hopeful. Right, thank you very much for doing the watching, and keep enjoying the rest of our programs. Bye.